Hey, everybody. Lieutenant Joe here for Hope is Not a Tactic. So, when we talk about school safety and security issues, there's lots of things to be concerned about. We know there's always the issue of violence in our schools, and we have to be very, very clear on our policy, our procedure, etc. We have to make sure we get a good quality threat assessment done. Now, we've talked about that in the past. We have previous episodes. We've talked about threat assessments, but you want to go look into them if you haven't had one. And if you haven't had one in a couple of years, you need to update them every couple of years, especially if you've got new equipment, new policies, new staff. Make sure you're up to speed on all of the things. And I'll probably do an update program soon. What I want to talk about today is another issue that as school personnel and law enforcement people, we really have to pay attention to something that is an underreported problem for young people that we will probably be in a position to see in our schools, our staff, other students, and we can take a look at this. And that is dating violence, teen dating violence. It is a serious problem. There's no doubt about it. Recently here in New Jersey, we had an incident where a 17-year-old young man, apparently obsessed with a 17-year-old young lady, stalking her, hanging around her house, putting things on social media, ranting and raving about this young lady, and his obsession took a violent turn. Now, apparently there was a restraining order against this young man in Cranford, New Jersey. That's where this took place. You probably heard about it on the news. It was a horrific, violent incident in which this young man in a vehicle, in a car, decided that he was going to take out his anger, his obsession, whatever else you want to call it, on this young lady. And her friend were riding an electric motorbike, one of these things that you see the kids riding around with. He revved his engines, got the car up to 70 miles an hour, and hit the girls purposely and killed them. So 2 young girls have lost their lives in this incident. Horrific for any parent, for any school district. The girls, horrific loss for them to lose their lives in such a terrible way. And in reality, this young man has ruined his life and probably his family's life as well. So there's a lot of things swirling around about this case that I'm not going to get into at this particular point, but there's concerns that the young man was related to law enforcement, and maybe that was a reason that things weren't enforced the way they should. I don't know. I haven't looked into that yet, but I will. I'm going to take a look. What I want to talk about now is what can we do as school personnel, teachers, administrators, school boards, parents, and law enforcement. I'm going to do a program for law enforcement on this, but we'll talk about that here. All right, so you see at the bottom of my screen right here, these are our sponsors who bring this program to us. So I want to thank them for being here. RiotTint.com, they make safety glazing for your windows and doors, which is important. Blue360media.com, they publish all my books, and soon we're going to have a school safety and security book out. And medicalessentialdiagnostics.com. Right now, they're a New Jersey-centric company, and they offer anyone who's any kind of government worker, state, federal, local, municipal, in New Jersey to get a health screening at no cost to you, and you find out that you're okay. So that's why I put their information here. Riot Tint, make sure you have that on the windows and doors of your schools. It prevents people from getting in immediately, gives you time to react in violence, right? And we talk about that. Blue 360 Media, get my books, and Medical Essential Diagnostics, get yourself checked out, make sure you're okay. All right, so I wrote an article about this, okay? I wrote an article about this, and I titled it, When Obsession Turns Deadly, Teen Dating Violence, Stalking, and an Urgent Need for Intervention. Now, the reason that we looked at this, a while ago, I had a staff member at a school reach out to me and say there was a big problem with teen dating violence that's kind of going under the radar. People don't look at it. They don't always take it very seriously. I don't know whether you do in your school or not, but we need to take it seriously. So I tried to cover a little bit about the Cranford case, what exactly happened. And that's like the most horrific. Two young ladies were killed by this individual because he had this obsession, and there was a restraining order. A restraining order is only a piece of paper. It is only as strong as the person who decides to respect it and not bother people. So what I said here in this article, and I'm going to put it up, I'm going to try and get it on my website, pangarotraining.com. But if anybody wants a copy of it, you can reach out to me, joe@pangarotraining.com. That's my email, joe@pangarotraining.com. Just tell me, hey, I'd like a copy of that article, and I will send it over to you. In the meantime, I'm probably going to publish it on, no, I think I did already. I don't know. If I didn't, I'll put it on there on my LinkedIn page. All right, Joseph Pangaro, you look me up, it'll be on the LinkedIn page. So why schools and police must act early. The Cranford case underscores a painful truth. Early warning signs in this case were present. We knew there were problems, but systems failed to respond. Schools and law enforcement must treat stalking and dating violence very seriously. You know, there's another problem that we have that we don't always look at so closely, and that's missing persons. Now, we all know with young kids, you know, school-age kids, we often get missing persons reports, and the police, they don't always like to take them. How come? Because you know what? The kids are perpetual runaway. So you go through this whole thing of taking reports, and then the kid shows up the next day. Well, one of the things that I teach law enforcement officers, we're doing a program today, as a matter of fact, on missing person investigations. And I think it's so important because when I was a detective, I found that a lot of times people would come in and report a young person missing, and you'd say, okay, you take the report, and it would just move through the system because the next day the kid turns back up, or 2 days later. We can't do that. We have to take this stuff unbelievably serious, and we have to go look into that immediately, even if it's a lot of work and then the kid comes home. Well, that's another area, just like teen dating violence, that we don't look at. So important. So one of the things that I'm going to suggest, and as I'm going to go through my points here, key considerations: mandatory reporting and response protocol. Schools should implement clear policies requiring staff to report suspected teen dating violence or stalking. You know, our teachers, and not only our teachers, but you know what? As a criminal investigator, when anything that was a problem in a school or any building at all that had a custodial staff, I went to them because they know everything. The people in your custodial department, they know everything about who's dating who, who's going with who's having a problem. They know everything. So they have to be trained as well. But they should be a mandatory reporting. Hey, I just saw this thing happen between this guy and this girl, this argument. And you could see they were boyfriend and girlfriend or whatever. And that's a problem. We need to set up immediate safety assessments. So when we get a report, how do we look at it? How do we find out and make sure that we're doing the right thing? So we want to do that. We have to notify parents and guardians that something's going on. We're seeing something here. And we have to coordinate with law enforcement to make sure that any follow-up that needs to be done. What if there was an assault? What if there's a domestic violence assault? People under 18 are affected by that as well, right? And sometimes we have those borderline relationships. You might have an 18-year-old in high school dating a 16-year-old or a 17-year-old, and there's violence. We have to make sure we're on top of that. Right? Make sure there's access to counseling and victim support services. Also very, very important. The Teen Dating Violence School Policy Toolkit recommends collaborative policy developments with educators, parents, community advocates, and students. So if you don't have policy or procedure on this, I can help you. Reach out to me, joe@pangarotraining.com, and I can offer you some ideas and some thoughts and help you do something. We need to look at digital behavior monitoring. That means social media. You know, this young man was going on there and he was ranting and raving about this girl. Clear signs that potential violence was in the offing. And that's something we have to monitor. How do you monitor it? Once we hear about a situation, one of the tools you need to do is go on social media, find the players, and see what they're saying on social media. Law enforcement needs to do this in many cases because everybody's on social media now and they're saying and doing things. So that's important for our schools. Education and prevention programs, all right? So there's lots of programs out there. You should set one up Now, I do lectures for kids, and that sounds boring, a lecture, but I'll come in and talk about dating violence. What are the signs, the symptoms? What is it they can do about it? And then I can also tell them about your policy and your procedures and what you have in place. So sometimes it's effective to have somebody like me from the outside come in and talk about this, right? Because sometimes kids see it, they hear it, but they don't want to say anything, right? So you have to make sure you do something. Set up a threat assessment team. Now, we need these for any kind of violence or problems in our schools. A threat assessment team. These are groups of individuals, administrators, teachers, custodians, counselors, anybody you have in the building gets on your team. When there's any kind of a threat, they address it as a team quickly. They go and they look at the threat. They evaluate the threat. What kind of a threat is it? Is this something we have to do immediately? Do we call the police? Do we handle it in-house? So you train those people. We call that human threat assessment training. I provide that as well. I'm going to teach you how to do it and help you set up your teams. All right. So we need training for our officers and for our staff members. Right. So we have an SRO. Maybe you have a local PD officer that comes into your schools. All of them and your teachers and everyone needs to be trained on what to look for and how to report it. That's very important. So this is really a call to action. We need to do this. These poor young girls that were killed are not alone in violence during teen dating, and we want to prevent it. We don't want people to get hurt, get killed, and we don't want other people to ruin their lives because they're not thinking clearly, right? We find out that there's some statistics I'm going to end with here. Teen dating violence and stalking is not isolated. According to the CDC, Center for Disease Control, 19% of teens experience dating violence and nearly half report being stalked or harassed by a partner. Now, I remember this from high school. You got somebody who's in love with this girl and then they break up and they just can't seem to take it, that the relationship's over, and they keep calling them, showing up, following them around. Most times it doesn't end in violence, just in broken hearts. But sometimes it ends in violence, and we want to prevent that, right? So think about that statistic. 1 in 12 teens reports physical or sexual dating violence annually. That's a lot, 1 in 12. Only 9% of teens in these abusive relationships report them. So it's a majorly underreported crime, just like domestic violence, which is still underreported, but it's a little more in the mainstream now. We know we have to report domestic violence. We have to go forward with domestic violence to protect people. 1 in 4 women who experienced violence were first victimized between the ages of 11 and 17. These are young kids going through this, right? And we also find that our LGBTQ plus community and in other marginalized groups also suffer from this kind of dating violence. It's actually more prevalent than we know. A program on for police on sexual assault investigations. And one of the things I had to look in was to see how that community, what's going on with them so that we can help protect them, right? A lot of times they don't want to come forward to make reports, and there's an underground system of violence that goes on in those relationships. That's not right. We have to protect everybody. So we want to maybe do some special messaging to that community in your schools to make sure they feel comfortable coming forward so they can be protected. And all right. So as all of these things continue to get worse, cases like the 2 young girls who lost their lives in Cranford, New Jersey, are going to continue. Not everyone dies in these incidents. Some people just get severely injured, or they get minorly injured, but it doesn't matter. It's not right. Nobody should get injured, right? So let's do the right thing. If you want that article, again, reach out to me, joe@pangarotraining.com, and I'll be happy to get you a copy. All right, so this is Lieutenant Joe for Hope is Not a Tactic. Tell your friends about the show, follow us, and we're going to grow. We're going to talk about, there's lots of good stuff on that channel for schools, for safety and security, can enhance your school. So go take a look. I have lots of topics on there that you're going to find important. All right. And our sponsors, Riot Tint, Blue 360 Media, and Medical Essential Diagnostics. Go see them. All of them can help you with what you're doing. All right. We'll see you down the road.